Hello, everyone. This is Christian Jane Kongstedt. My name on eToro is CPH Equities, and this is my presentation for Q1 2023. First of all, I would like to say that you're welcome to ask questions in the Q&A box, which is a part of the Zoom software. And then I would like to welcome you to this webinar. We're going to speak a little bit about who I am, my professional background. We're going to speak about long-term investing and also about a strategy update. We're going to speak about the current markets and also about developments in AI, which is something that I find quite interesting and which is also an important part of my portfolio. And then I will give you an overview of the portfolio and tell you how it has developed since we spoke last, which is 3 months ago. So first of all, as you know, I'm CPH Equities on eToro. Originally, I trained as a journalist at the Danish School of Journalism, and that's quite a few years ago. I had a career in online marketing, working with Google ads, working with Facebook ads, Amazon ads, and I was doing a lot of things in online marketing. And since 2009, I was doing that part-time, and I started my business in which I invest and also trade to a certain extent. And I've been focusing on investing and trading for the last 11 years. And since 2015, I've been using 50% of my time for investing. And the last 3 years, I've been investing and trading full time. I'm a fan of games. I'm a 4-time Danish Scrabble champion. I'm a former elite chess player, and I love everything that's related to games and to numbers. And I think that's also partly why my fascination with the financial markets, where it comes from, because I'm fascinated by everything that you can analyze, everything you can optimize, and everything you can improve. And I think playing games at a very high level has taught me quite a few things that I can use in investing and trading, which is that I have a highly analytical approach to tackling problems. I have strong pattern recognition skills, which can be used in technical analysis. I've also studied and several times have become an expert at a topic, which is something that you need to specialize in when you get good at, for instance, a game. And I'm also very good at keeping my head cool when under pressure. So when I'm feeling the pressure in financial markets, I'm usually quite good at taking it easy for a while and try to analyze the situation in an objective manner. And I always love a good challenge, whether it is to run a marathon or climb a mountain or something different. And I think eToro is probably my latest challenge, which I've been doing for 6 years now. And my challenge on eToro is, of course, to perform better than the overall markets over a longer period. And I've done this so far. I've written quite a few books. Some of them are about games, but the latest one, which is actually quite a few years ago in 2015, was about the Danish day traders, which I interviewed with my good friend Erik Borg. And I started to get very fascinated by the world of trading and the world of investing. And based on this, I started trading and investing myself. I had been a stock investor for many years, actually, from before the financial crisis. But at this point, I really started to focus most of my attention on trading and investing. And I got very inspired by meeting the best Danish day traders. I'm quite often interviewed by financial media, for instance, some of the Danish media, but also international media. And I mainly speak about the tech stocks. I speak about cryptocurrencies, and I also speak about stocks in general. And some of the screenshots you see from here is from my latest media appearances. The performance over 6 years has been quite good, quite much better than the overall market. My annualized return is around 7.3 as it stands now. which is quite a lot better than any index you would compare me to. And also this year I've been performing quite a lot better than the overall market for the first quarter. Yesterday when I made this update, I was about 6.8% up this year, and I see that we have a very green day today, so I'm actually above 8% now, and the overall market is around 4 to 5% if you measure it by the S&P. So I'm performing better than the market this year, and also if you have the longer period, like the 6-year period, I'm performing quite a lot better than the overall market, which is my goal to do. And yeah, here you see the actual numbers as measured yesterday. The S&P was around 3%, and I was about 7%, so I was almost 4 percentage points better than the market this year. And that's something obviously I try to measure, and I think you shouldn't go too much into detail about like very short-term performance. I think what is really the key here is to look at the long-term performance and see how did I perform over a longer period, because the stock market tends to fluctuate, and sometimes some kinds of stocks or some sectors of the stock market are out of favor, and then they perform badly for a period of, you know, a quarter or even a year. So you need to look at performance in a long-term perspective, and if you do that, I've been performing quite a lot better than the market. My overall goal with being on eToro is to take my account from the current amount to $1 million, and I have set myself for this task, and it will take me around 15.5 years if I keep my performance target. And my performance target is to perform 9 percentage points better than the S&P per year on average. Some years I'm going to be quite a lot better. Some years I'm going to be worse, but my average, I hope, and that is my target, should be 9 percentage points better. And that is almost that's around what I've been doing so far, if you look back at the last 6 years. But obviously some years are much better than the S&P, and some years are not. So I'm not beating the S&P 500, the US index, in all years, but I'm beating it in most years. Right now, there are 2 components of the portfolio. I have most of my funds invested in stocks, and this means that when the stock market goes up, that obviously affects my portfolio as well, because the overall portfolio is correlated with the stock market to some extent. It has a correlation of 0.5 to the S&P 500. But also I try to find other ways of investing and trading that are not necessarily correlated to the market, to make sure that I have decent returns also in periods where the stock market does not go up. And so I try to have a smaller portion of the market which is invested or traded via algorithms and trading strategies that I develop and test. So overall, my target returns would be in the area of 12 to 22% on average, with ups and downs depending on the stock market performance. And this year, the stock market has been performing quite well. Overall, we have almost 3 months now, and the stock market is 4% up, and I'm around 8% up. So at this point, it's going well for the stock market, and that also reflects the performance of my portfolio, of course. So, but having more than only stocks in my portfolio, I think, will give me some advantages. And the main advantages is that I could possibly have higher returns, and returns that are not necessarily 100% correlated to the stock market. I can have a broader diversification, which is really important when you invest, and also if you plan to have my portfolio aside with other investments. And it's also a low risk approach to achieving higher returns. So I try to to also trade indices, forex, based on algorithms that I am developing also and working with different teams on. And I want to give an update on my strategy so far. And I'm having some challenges with my forex strategies, and the main reason that I'm a bit challenged is that I'm not able to trade those strategies automatically, and this means that when I can't do that, I have to trade them manually, and for this reason, it's not easy to close and open the trades at the right time always, because I'm not awake 24 hours a day. And this means that even though I have a reasonable strategy, and I was trading this strategy on S&P 500, which has been doing quite well, it's difficult for me to trade it real time, because I'm simply not awake to take the trades all of these times, and I'm not able to use an API on eToro to do it. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the API and cannot get access. So for this reason, I have scaled back on some of the algorithmic strategies, even though some of them were performing quite well. This strategy that I'm been showing here is traded automatically on another account, and you can see the performance of the account here, which is 40%, which is a high risk account. It's based on 350 trades, but it's quite difficult for me to trade the strategy when I cannot trade it automatically. So I have moved a little bit away from some of those strategies to something that I can trade manually, which is a zone trading strategy system that I've been trading on a test account as well. And I've started to take some of those trades on eToro, but with a very low risk. And it's based on identifying key zones where you can see market turns, and it has been performing quite well. It's basically, you can see this is trade from the British FTSE index, where I'm using software which identifies the zones that I can trade, and then I'm using some specific strategies to trade those zones, and it has been working quite well, I think. So I'm taking some of these trades on eToro, but I've only started out doing this with very small risk. But overall, after a little bit more testing, I may be able to take more trades with this strategy, and you can see the performance here on the on the test account. I've only been taking 58 trades, so it's a quite small sample size, but the win rate is pretty good. It's 67%, and overall I haven't had very large drawdowns, so it's going in the right direction. And on this account, I was performing quite well. So it's a very small account. I'm just trading to test out if this is something that I could be doing with a small part of my portfolio on eToro. And I think maybe after one more month of testing, I may be able to implement this strategy where I'm trading indices and currencies on eToro to a large extent that what I'm doing now. So sample size is still quite small, so I need to trade it a bit more and to have some more experience with it before I really start doing it full scale on eToro. So I think one thing that's important that I've been discussing on the feed on eToro, and that I have seen a lot of interest in from many users and copyers, is investing in AI. So I want to give an update on how things are going in the AI world, which is something that's quite important for my portfolio, as the main companies in my portfolio are some of the companies that are having a very strong position in AI. And obviously what was quite important during this period was in November, actually. It was OpenAI, the company that is partly owned by Microsoft, launched ChatGPT, and I think most of you have probably heard of it. It's a chatbot that can do various things. It can actually write articles, it can write poems, it can write code, it can do a lot of different things that are quite useful. And just a few days ago, Bill Gates, which is the founder of Microsoft, posted on his blog that when he saw the demo of this last year, he knew that he had just seen the most important advance in technology since the graphical user interface that he implemented in Microsoft, which was around, almost 40 years ago. And the reason why he's saying this is that that this is a key development, because it's bringing the distance between computers, which is technology, and humans. They're bringing technology and humans closer, in the sense that now, originally we needed to code to communicate with computer. These days we're using the graphical user interface that Bill Gates mostly invented. And the new step in this development is that now we're able to communicate via natural language, and that's going to be quite groundbreaking for the development of computer technology. And I think that's really interesting, and that's also one of the reasons why I'm so invested in some of the companies that you would see that are the main components of my portfolio. So what are you able to do in this new wave of AI? So far, AI was mainly used for data analysis. It was used for games, playing games like chess and a lot of other games, and also for predictions, like predicting what Netflix movies you would like to see, a Netflix series, if you saw 5 other series, and predicting what YouTube videos you would see, or your Google search results, or the next TikTok video. All of this is done by AI. But the new wave of AI is what you call generative AI, and this allows us to create text, images, even music, poems, and code with the AI that has been invented by OpenAI, and also Google is working on similar stuff. Also, generating movies and videos and games will be coming quite soon, and also to a certain extent you can already make simple games and simple videos with AI technology. And this image you see here is actually an image that is 100% created by AI. These are not real people, and it just shows you that AI is able to create images that are very realistic. It also can write pretty good articles. It can automate a lot of things that we're doing today. Those of us that are doing office work could have a productivity boost from these technologies. And I'm going to go a bit more into detail with this, because I think especially Microsoft and Google are the companies that can benefit from this new wave of AI. So just to sum up, OpenAI launched their chatbot ChatGPT, and Microsoft incorporated this into their search engine Bing, and made Bing Chat. And maybe some of you have been using this. I think it's very interesting what it can do. Alphabet countered by launching their chatbot Bard to beta test it in the US and UK. And I haven't had access to Bard yet, but I'm testing the Bing Chat, and I think it can do a lot of interesting stuff. I think one problem with these AI technologies is that they tend to sometimes make things up. They tend to hallucinate sometimes. And for this reason, I don't necessarily see a search as their main focus, even though Microsoft is incorporating ChatGPT into Bing. But the problem is that sometimes it just invents things. And for this reason, I don't consider it a big threat to Google search. And also during this, the last 3 months, we have seen that it has in no way hurt Google search, and it hasn't hurt Alphabet that OpenAI launched ChatGPT. There are still more Google searching a number of Google searches is going up during this period, like it has been for the last decades. and ChatGPT didn't have an impact on how people search as such. It's a useful tool, but for search, you want precise answers. And I think Google is and Google search is probably still the best tool for this. But that doesn't mean that ChatGPT and Bing Chat cannot be used for interesting things, and I will get back to that. But I think the main use for AI is what have been announced by Microsoft and Alphabet recently, which is using AI tools for businesses. And I'm going to go through a few of these things because I think that's something that's quite interesting, especially what Microsoft is doing in this space, and Google is going to do something similar with their workspace tools. So what Microsoft launched just 6 days ago is that they're going to incorporate these AI technologies in all of their tools, and that's going to make a huge difference for the way that we work, the way that we use Office, and I think that's going to change a lot. So let's take a look at it. So some of you may be using Teams now. Today we're using Zoom, but Microsoft Teams is a competing software, which is obviously the software where you are having online meetings. And what you can do with the new Microsoft Copilot, as they call their AI product, is that when you're in a meeting, like this meeting, it can summarize the meeting so far. So like, let's say you are late to this presentation. Now we have been, we're 22 minutes into this presentation. You can just ask the AI to recap what I've been saying so far. And it's going to give you like 8 or maybe 3 bullet points of the most important points I've been discussing so far. And that is going to bring you up to speed with what has been happening in this meeting. You can ask it to summarize what has been going on in the meeting, and you can even ask which questions are unresolved if we've been having a discussion and something is unresolved. So that's something that's really useful, and it's going to bring more productivity to online meetings, I think. In Outlook, and now I'm just giving a few examples of what this new AI software can do, which they call Copilot. You can, they have a catch-up function for your inbox, and what you can do with that is that you start the catch-up function, and it's going to focus and find maybe the 3 most important emails of this day. So let's say you have a full inbox with 50 emails. It's going to find the most relevant emails this day, allow you to read them, or if there's a discussion going on, let's say there have been 15 emails in the discussion, you can ask the Copilot to summarize what has been going on in this email thread without reading all 15 mails. Maybe you can summarize this in something that you can read in 30 seconds instead of using 10 minutes on reading 15 emails. So I think what it's going to do is that it will bring more productivity for those of us that are office workers, and that's a lot of people these days. It's going to make us more efficient, I think, and that's in the end a very good thing for Microsoft and for Google, because it's going to make their products much better. Google have their own workspace apps, and they have announced that they're going to do something that's similar to what Microsoft is doing with their Office tools right now. One thing I found quite interesting as well is that in PowerPoint, and you can use this Copilot in all Microsoft, all the main Microsoft applications, you can ask it and you can just write that it should make a new presentation based on another presentation, and you can ask it to add a specific slide to a presentation. What you just write the text and the software creates the slide for you. You don't have to click create a new slide, and you don't have to find an image yourself. The software and the Copilot, the AI, is going to suggest an image for you, and it's going to suggest a way to build a slide, and then you can edit the slide afterwards, and you can also say that the AI should change the slide to something that's less let's say, more visual. It has less text in it. You can also ask the AI to animate the slide, and it can do a lot of things based on a prompt that you're using. So you're just writing it in text, and you can use all of the functions that you would be using in PowerPoint, but without clicking and without being a PowerPoint power user. In Excel, you have similar tools. The AI can help you to analyze your data, and it can use all of the data you have about your business. So you can ask it questions about your business, and it can create graphs. It can create answers based on all the material that you have. So let's say you have thousands of documents, of spreadsheets and PowerPoints. The AI can index all of this content and give you answers, intelligent answers based on this content, and create new graphs and new content based on this. And you can ask it questions like, please let me know why my business declined over the last quarter, what happened, what product categories didn't perform well. And the software is going to give you great answers to this, at least according to the presentation we have seen from Microsoft, because obviously not many people have tried this software yet. So it's interesting to see how it develops. Overall, the model is like this. You have the Microsoft Copilot, as it's called, which is able to tap into all of the Microsoft apps. It uses a large language model, which is this AI model that's trained on billions and billions of documents. And then it uses something they call the Microsoft Graph, which is basically all of your content, all of your files, to give you great answers based on everything that you have been producing yourself and your organization has been producing. And I think this is really a groundbreaking technology for businesses. And Microsoft and Alphabet are the leading players in this space. And I think what they have announced here is something that's just going to make it much more difficult for other players to get into the space, because they have a very large amount of data. Both companies, they have a lot of customers, and they can roll out those software improvements and profit from this. So I think it's very good news for Microsoft and Alphabet shareholders especially, and of course those are some of the largest positions in my portfolio. So for this reason, I think it's quite interesting for me to speak about and for you to know about. And I see I've already gotten a question in the chat box. I'm going to take the questions at the end of the session. So, but if you want to ask questions, you can just ask them in the Q&A section on Zoom, and I'm going to take them in the end. So this was about AI. I think the overall picture is right now, it looks like especially Microsoft and Alphabet is going to benefit and profit from this new generative AI revolution that we're seeing, because they are the big players, and it's quite difficult for smaller players to enter this market because they have much more data, they have much more resources, and much better products at this point than anyone else. And I think especially Microsoft and Alphabet is profiting from this, but also NVIDIA, which is also an important position in my portfolio, because they are making the hardware which is fueling this revolution that we're seeing in AI. All of the big data centers, all of the big computers, all of the hardware is basically built based on NVIDIA GPUs. And for this reason, you're seeing NVIDIA perform pretty well. And I think that's not something that's going to stop anytime soon. It's really an amazing company. So especially those three companies, which is part of my core portfolio, is something that will benefit from this. And then I'm going to say a little bit about the current markets. Obviously, during the last 2-3 years, most of the things that have been happening in the markets has been decided by this man, which is Jerome Powell, the director of the Fed in the US, and the decisions that he is taking with regards to rate hikes or pausing rates, or maybe at some point rate cuts. And we had a big event yesterday where the Fed decided to hike rates with another 25 basis points, and this means that we are still seeing higher interest rates, which is putting a bind on the whole economy, and that's obviously a challenge. If we look at the bullish and the bearish scenarios and elements in this, the bullish part of the picture we're seeing right now is that the overall economy is quite resilient, and we're seeing unemployment is still very low. We also get the feeling when we read the statements from the Fed that the Fed may actually pause interest rates hikes quite soon. And that is going to be bullish for the market. So it's probably not likely to see the Fed hiking interest rates in the later part of this year. And that is most likely going to be a bullish catalyst for the markets. On the other hand, on the more bearish side, we're seeing that inflation is more sticky than we thought just a while ago. It's proving harder to combat inflation, and for this reason, and that is also the statement that came out of the Fed meeting yesterday, is that we may see higher interest rates for longer, and we're not going to see rate cuts this year. That's at least the points that were made by Jerome Powell yesterday. Also, we're having a bank crisis of some sort. We're seeing, we saw problems with SVB Bank, Silicon Valley Bank in the US. We've been seeing problems for Signature Bank, problems for First Republic Bank related to deposits in those banks. And we may not have seen the last victim in this banking crisis yet. That's obviously something that can shake the market a bit, especially if the banks and the depositors are not saved in the right way, which they have been so far. Also, growth going forward is expected to slow down due to the high interest rates, and we may not have seen the full effect of the high interest rates yet. The current sentiment is quite mixed. The markets are very volatile, and I think there was some nervousness about this banking situation for the last few weeks, but now it seems like, at least on the short term, it seems like the problems were sorted out. So for now, the markets are quite okay. I would say we're seeing a very bullish day today, very green day today. But going forward, I'm quite sure that the markets are going to be quite volatile, and the reason for this is that the Fed has stated that they're going to be data dependent, which means that every time we have an inflation print coming out, you're seeing huge volatility in the market, because everyone is trying to assess what this will mean for the rate hikes going forward. And this means that we are having a lot of volatility around those events, and that is going to be the same going forward, and at least for some quarters, I think, because yeah, until we get a pause in interest rates, and that may be a bullish catalyst for the market. But right now, I would say that the first quarter has been quite good performance-wise. There was a lot to worry about going into this year, and even if there was, we're still 8% up this year, and this is just tells you that you should never, get too scared about what's happening in the markets right now, because there's always something to worry about. So just keep on investing. That's my best advice as a general advice. The portfolio right now, I'm going to give an overview of that. We have the core of the portfolio, which is what I've been speaking about today. Those are some of the companies that are profiting from this generative AI revolution that we're seeing, especially Google, Microsoft, and NVIDIA. And I'm going to keep those companies in in different sizes over the next years, I'm quite sure, because I think they are leading some of the leading companies in our world, and also for this decade, they are forming the tools that we're using for productivity and for working, and also in our free time. And for this reason, I think they're going to profit also going forward, and they're going to perform better than the market on average, at least. And for this reason, I have them as the core of my portfolio. Then I have some exposure to cybersecurity, as I've been having for quite a long time. I think cybersecurity is an issue that's increasingly important, and we're seeing growth rates in the industry of averaging around 15% per year. And for this reason, I think, you know, in a decade from now, some of those companies are going to be much larger than they are now. And that's the reason why I keep investing in this sector. And I'm probably going to, maybe expand that depending on the timing and so, but that's something that I could expand in the portfolio. Then, as you know, since the last almost 2 years, I've been investing in assets that are working to some extent as a hedge against a high inflationary scenario, and I've been building out especially the commodities and energy sector. So many of those positions are working well in an environment where you have higher inflation. So all of the positions here are to some extent a hedge against this scenario. And actually it has turned out that inflation is staying higher for longer, so we need something that can still have a good performance even if inflation stays higher, which it looks like it will for some time now. So this is especially the commodities and energy sector, and also we have bank exposure, and banks should also profit from higher interest rates as long as we don't go into a deep recession. We have something like luxury goods, which is usually quite good in an inflationary scenario, and also payments could still perform well even if we have inflation, because the cut that companies that Microsoft and Visa take out of payments will be taken from higher prices if you have more inflation, and for this reason the turnover is also going to get higher when inflation rises. I also have some crypto exposure, and crypto has been performing quite well, and I see that I have one question about crypto, so I'm going to speak a little bit more about that when we get to the questions. And you can ask questions in the Q&A box over there. So lately, I've also been working a bit on a recession hedge, which is a bit of bond exposure and a bit of exposure to sectors that are usually performing better, relatively better in a recessionary scenario, but especially the bonds in a situation where we're going into a recession. It's likely that interest rates will come down, and when interest rates come down, then prices of bonds rise. And for this reason, we've already seen that some of those bond positions have been performing quite well when there's a fear of a recession. So this recession hedge is proving to be a good diversification at this point, and also something which quite useful, and something I could expand on if we are having an outlook that's going to be more recessionary, and then I could expand this part of the portfolio as well. And I have a few positions in health, and also some more traditional exposure to something I would call more like value investing, and some exposure to the Indian market, which I think is something that's going to be a very long-term investment based on the development that we're seeing in India. I think over the next decades, India is going to be overperforming compared to the general market. that's going to be very interesting to follow. So I expect to keep an investment in India over this very long period. So now I stated that I want to be on eToro for at least 15 years and to take my account to $1 million during this period. And I expect India to be a part of my portfolio most of this time, because they are they are in front of a development which is going to take the country, the middle class of India, to be much more prosperous, and that's going to benefit a huge amount of companies in India. So I think in the end, I just want to give you a small piece of advice. I think what is important is not to all the time consider, should I jump into the market, should I jump out of the market, but just make sure that you make investing a habit. Make sure that you invest continuously, like every quarter or every month or every year, because you should not try to predict if the market is going up or down on the short term. The thing you can be certain about is that if you look at the stock market history, it has gone up on average 8% a year, and it's likely to go up in the future as well. But we cannot say just in the short term, like for instance for the rest of the year, for sure if it will go up or if it will go down. So the best thing you can do is to do dollar cost averaging and make sure that you invest continuously, because this is going to keep you in the market. And think less about if this is a very good moment to invest. Going into this year, I think most people were quite worried, and now 3 months later we are up 8%. So this shows you that that even though you can be quite worried about how the situation is, it's not feasible to try to predict short term what's going to happen. It's much better to have a habit of investing continuously. So with these words, I will conclude the presentation and open up for questions. And I've been emailed, or actually I had a few questions on the eToro feed, so I'm going to take those questions first, and then other questions from the Q&A box. I can see I have a bit there as well, so I'm going to go through this, and after that, if there are no more questions, I'm going to end the webinar. So the first question is, apart from AI, does the role of Big Blue and quantum computing have a slice in your high-tech portfolio considerations? So I'm assuming that in this question that this person is referring to Big Blue, the IBM computer, and what they're doing in quantum computing. And I think for quantum computing, I'm looking at what's going to happen like in the next 2, 3, maybe 5 years, and during this period, I don't see quantum computing having a very large and important role to play. I think it's a bit further out in the future. Alphabet is doing some experimenting. IBM is doing experimenting in quantum computing, but I would much rather invest in something that's also likely to perform well during the next 2, 3, 5 years, which is the AI revolution that we're seeing. That's actually going to have an impact on businesses like this year, next year. And I think quantum computing is a bit further out in the future. So for this reason, I'm not going to take like IBM as a position in my portfolio, but I'm obviously following this development quite closely. Are there any videos or any content that you would recommend to get to understand better how Microsoft and Google are combining their search functions and any other operations with AI? And I think the best way to start is probably to go to the YouTube page of Microsoft 365 and then see some of the videos on how they're going to implement AI in Microsoft 365. Because I think that's something that's going to show you how AI is going to change some of the products that we all use this year. And I think that's going to have a huge impact on Microsoft because it's going to make their products much better, which is eventually going to be profitable for the company. Alphabet is doing something similar, but if you look at the Microsoft 365 videos on their YouTube channel, then you will have a quite good impression about what's coming up. And then another question about AI. AI is a very interesting topic. I'm curious. I wonder if AI will ever be able to give better indications on the markets than we human beings are able to do. We will see. And I think that's something that's quite interesting. I think it's already happening to some extent now. We're seeing AI playing a role in investment decisions. I myself am working with some teams that are doing algorithms based on machine learning, and I use those algorithms and this AI to take my own decisions. I use it as input for my decisions. So I think certainly AI is going to be useful also for investors and for traders. I think right now it's going to be as a co-pilot like Microsoft is using it. So it's going to give inputs on what investments to make, but finally I'm going to make the decisions about what to invest in. And I think for now, that's the best way to use AI. I think that's also the way we're going to use Microsoft 365 tools. So we're going to get it to draft the email for us, but eventually you're the one that's going to edit the draft and also the one that's going to press the send button. So it's going to be like a co-pilot, and in this sense, I think it's going to work pretty well. And then for the questions in the Q&A, we have a question here, which is if I intend to increase the proportion of my portfolio held in Bitcoin. Other coins are shit coins, in my opinion. Bitcoin can grow nicely by the approaching halving next year. And I think it's a very good question by this user. I actually agree that that Bitcoin is doing quite well, and also going into this year, I was a part of a podcast which was published on YouTube, where I said that watch out for Bitcoin this year, because technically, when you looked at technical analysis, I thought that it was looking quite bullish, and at that point it was at $21,000 US dollars. And today I think Bitcoin is around $27,500, and I think Bitcoin this year has proved to be quite a good investment, also a little bit less correlated to the overall market that we have been seeing previously, and for this reason it's quite interesting. For me personally, I have some exposure to Bitcoin, and I would like it not to be too much in the sense that it's still a very risky investment. I think I have between 0.7 and 0.8% of my portfolio in Bitcoin, and I see Bitcoin as an investment that can triple from here. It's certainly possible that it could. In a worst case scenario, it can go to zero. So if I say that I lose 0.7% of my portfolio, it would still be okay, but there's a large upside potentially to this trade. There's a possibility that we could see new all-time highs in Bitcoin, maybe not this year, but also, as the user is pointing out, we're having the halving, Bitcoin halving this year, which means that the newly produced Bitcoins, the number of newly produced Bitcoins is going to halve in, I think it's around May next year. And that usually creates a sentiment, a very positive sentiment about Bitcoin. So I think we could see higher Bitcoin prices, but also I like to keep my portfolio in a way that's not too risky. So let's say I had 5% in Bitcoin, I would say it could maybe make my portfolio perform better this year, but it's also a pretty risky position. So for this reason, I tend to keep the crypto part of my portfolio as a small part of the overall position. I'm going to let it grow. I have let it grow for a while. I'm going to let it grow more if it grows, and not not sell it right now, even if it's growing. So it's going to be a growing part of my portfolio if it grows. But I don't think I want to keep like 5% of my portfolio in crypto, because I think it's simply too risky. Because the problem about cryptocurrencies is that you can have random events happening in the crypto market, like large players in the crypto markets. We have seen, like, for instance, FTX, which went bankrupt, and that just kills every crypto asset. And that's random events that can happen basically anytime. And for this reason, it makes this market quite risky to invest in. So I think it's still a good long-term exposure to have, but I wouldn't want to increase my position. I think it's still too risky. So that's all I have to say about Bitcoin. I hope that was sufficient for this viewer. If not, then let me know. I may change my mind, of course, about Bitcoin, but for now, I think that's I think it makes more sense to have it quite a quite small part of the portfolio. Actually, you can see the updated price of Bitcoin is 28,420. So it's performing pretty well even today. And I like to have it as a part of my portfolio, because I think it's probably over a period of, let's say, the next 3 to 4 years, it's going to perform better than the stock market. And it's also proving some returns that may be uncorrelated to the stock market. That's what you hope as an investor, at least. So with these words, I'm going to conclude the presentation. It was a pleasure being with you, having your questions, and I'll see you next time when we have the Q2 presentation. Thank you for today.